The memory leak. When your PC completely freezes, your hardware is usually perfectly fine. You are looking at a memory leak. When you open a program, your OS loans it a block of RAM. When the program closes, it's supposed to give that memory back. But poorly written software loses the pointer to that memory. The app closes, but the dead data stays locked on the RAM stick. These dead blocks pile up silently in the background until your RAM hits 100% capacity. With no memory left to execute basic system tasks, the entire computer locks up. The only way to break the cycle is a hard restart to wipe the RAM clean, followed immediately by updating or uninstalling the buggy software. The blue screen of death. Most people think a blue screen of death means the computer broke. It's actually the exact opposite. It is an emergency defense mechanism. The core of your operating system, called the kernel, constantly manages the hardware. If the kernel detects a critical miscommunication, like a corrupt driver trying to overwrite essential system memory, it purposefully triggers a kernel panic. It instantly kills all processes and crashes the system to prevent permanent data corruption. To recover, you need to photograph the error code, boot the system into safe mode, and roll back whatever hardware driver you just updated. GPU artifacting. If your game suddenly rips apart into jagged neon polygons and static, your graphics card is dying. This is called artifacting. A GPU stores the immediate textures and visual data it needs inside dedicated memory chips called VRAM. If those chips overheat or begin to physically fail, they hand corrupted data back to the processor. The monitor faithfully displays that broken math as terrifying visual garbage. It is the final warning sign before the card completely fails. You can try checking your thermals and underclocking the VRAM, but if the artifacting persists, the silicon is physically degrading and the card must be replaced. Dead pixels and burn-in. A permanent black dot on your monitor is a dead thin film transistor. Every single pixel on an LCD screen is controlled by its own microscopic transistor. If a manufacturing defect or a physical impact breaks that specific transistor, it can no longer pass light through the liquid crystal. It permanently shuts off. But if you have an OLED screen, you face burn-in. OLED pixels create their own light. If you leave a static UI element on the screen for hours, those specific pixels are forced to burn much brighter and harder than the rest. They permanently degrade faster, leaving a ghosted shadow burned into the panel. A dead pixel can sometimes be revived by applying gentle pressure with a microfiber cloth to reset the liquid crystal, while OLED burn-in can only be mitigated by running the monitor's built-in pixel refresh cycle and setting your taskbar to auto-hide. The click of death. If you hear a rhythmic metallic clicking sound coming from your case, your data is already dying. Inside a mechanical hard drive, a tiny read/write head hovers on a cushion of air just nanometers above the spinning magnetic platters. If the drive suffers physical wear or a sudden power drop, the read head fails to find the data track. The drive panics and violently pulls the arm back, physically slamming it against the metal stopper. That impact is the click. The drive traps itself in this loop until the arm eventually crashes straight into the platter, physically scraping your data away forever. The second you hear that click, turn the PC off. Do not run recovery software. Your only hope is to clone the drive or send it to a professional data recovery center before the platter is destroyed. SSD silent death. Unlike mechanical drives, solid-state drives make zero noise when they die. They just lock up forever. An SSD stores your data by trapping microscopic electrons inside silicon cells, but passing electrons through the cell wall physically wears it down. Every time you save or delete a file, that barrier degrades. Eventually, the cell walls become too weak to hold a charge. To prevent complete data loss, the drive's controller detects this structural failure and permanently locks the SSD into a read-only state. There is no physical repair for this. Your only option is to back up your files immediately while the drive still lets you read them and buy a replacement. Thermal throttling. If your frame rates suddenly get cut in half after 20 minutes of heavy use, your processor is suffocating. Computers pull in fresh cooling air, but they also suck in microscopic dust and dirt. Over months, this forms a solid mat that completely blocks the exhaust fins. Heat gets trapped. When a processor hits 95 degrees Celsius, the motherboard intervenes to prevent the silicon from physically melting. It triggers thermal throttling, intentionally slashing the voltage sent to the CPU. Your system lags because your PC is actively choking itself to survive. Restoring your performance requires opening the chassis, using compressed air to blast out the heat fins, and reapplying fresh thermal paste to the processor. Coil whine. That high-pitched screaming sound coming from your PC under heavy load isn't a broken fan, it's electromagnetism. It's called coil whine. When your GPU suddenly demands massive power, electricity rushes through inductors, coils of copper wire that regulate voltage. This massive current creates rapidly shifting magnetic fields, causing the copper coils to physically vibrate against their outer casing. When they vibrate thousands of times a second, human ears perceive it as a high-pitched screech. You cannot fix the hardware itself, but undervolting your GPU or capping your frame rates in-game will reduce the sudden electrical load and quiet the screeching. The liquid short. Spilling liquid on your electronics doesn't kill the device because water is inherently destructive. Pure water actually resists electricity, but everyday water is full of microscopic minerals and salts. When that liquid hits a live circuit board, those minerals act as an instant, highly conductive bridge between two copper traces. A 12-volt power line suddenly connects straight into a delicate microchip designed for only 1 volt. The chip overloads and fries in a millisecond. To save a submerged device, unplug it instantly. Skip the rice, it just introduces dust. Instead, open the device, gently clean the board with 90% isopropyl alcohol to strip away the minerals and let it air dry for 48 hours. The boot loop. A boot loop is a computer with amnesia. The BIOS is the foundational instruction manual, hard-coded into a tiny chip on your motherboard. It tells the hardware exactly how to turn on. If a PC loses power exactly when that BIOS chip is updating, the instruction manual is left half-written. The next time you hit the power button, the processor looks for instructions, hits corrupted garbage data, panics, and shuts down. It tries again, creating an endless loop. The physical hardware is flawless, but without its basic startup instincts, it's a brick. You can revive it by unplugging the PC and removing the tiny coin cell battery on the motherboard for 5 minutes to clear the CMOS, or by using the motherboard's BIOS flashback button to force a fresh install. The power surge. A power surge is catastrophic electrical failure. During a grid fluctuation or a lightning strike, the standard voltage from your wall can instantly spike to over 1,000 volts. A high-quality power supply unit has sacrificial components designed to absorb this hit and burn out to save the rest of the PC. But if the surge is too massive or the power supply is cheap, that raw, unregulated voltage blasts straight into the motherboard. It overpressurizes the electrolytic fluid inside the capacitors, causing them to physically burst and permanently melts the microscopic silicon gates inside the CPU. The only fix is prevention through a dedicated high-joule surge protector or UPS. If the surge already hit, you replace your power supply and pray the motherboard survived. The parasitic miner. If your computer sounds like a jet engine and lags while you are just staring at the desktop, your hardware is likely perfectly fine, but it has been hijacked. This is a parasitic miner. When you download a shady software crack or a fake email attachment, a silent script is buried in your system. Instead of stealing your passwords, it steals your hardware. It forces your processor and graphics card to run at 100% capacity in the background, constantly solving complex mathematical equations to mine cryptocurrency for a remote hacker. It secretly drains your electricity, severely degrades your hardware's lifespan, and throttles your daily performance to an absolute crawl. The only fix is to disconnect your PC from the internet immediately to sever the hacker's connection, boot into safe mode, and run a deep offline malware sweep to rip the parasitic code out of your system.